right?
Yeah,
huh?
I'm fine.
Yeah?
Trying to seduce me on the
What?
sneak tip. Oh, that was very seductive what you
What are
just
you talking
did.
about?
You know what
You
I'm
had something in your
Oh,
eye. I saved your eye.
No. I know what it's like when you have something in your eye. I was a kid before. Your mother opens your eye, blow, your whole eyeball comes out. And it was never like you just did. Come on now, that was very seductive what you just did.
No. And let me assure you of something. When I seduce you, if I decide to seduce you, don't worry, you'll know.
Hello everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're going to take a look back at the great romantic comedy Boomerang, how it perceives relationships in terms of its characters, and who is the real player of the piece. So when looking back on the movie, we go to the original release date of July the 1st, 1992, where it stars Eddie Murphy, Robin Givens, Halle Berry, Martin Lawrence, for Kitt, Grace Jones, David Alan Grier, and it was directed by Reginald Hudlin. Now the story of Boomerang centres on successful advertising executive Marcus Graham, who has a notorious reputation for seducing women purely for his own sexual desires. Fully proud of his status, he sleeps with multiple women with no consideration for their feelings. We see his example early on, when he's willing to sleep with the elderly company owner Lady Eloise in hopes of getting promoted to the head of marketing. Now the dynamic starts to change when he meets Jacqueline Boyer, a stunningly beautiful woman who Marcus looks to as his next conquest. Surprisingly to him, Jacqueline is actually the new head of marketing, but this doesn't deter Marcus from pursuing her, but she's seemingly able to resist his attempts all too easily. Now Jacqueline eventually sleeps with Marcus, and all of a sudden he starts to develop feelings for her, believing her to finally be the woman to match his expectations. But he finds that the tables have been turned, as Jacqueline treats him with the same disdain and ignorance that he has treated other women. Suddenly it's him who's now waiting for her to call, it's him being on the end of the jokes as he sees Jacqueline bragging to her friends about him in the office. He feels the insecurity and frustration and the inequality that so many of his women have felt when they were around him. The player is very much being played. Now when looking back at Boomerang, it's one of those comedies that I've always loved, and I remember watching so many times. It's entertaining, always rewatchable, and it's very sharp and witty, and yes, it's very adult orientated, but it doesn't feel too gratuitous or juvenile or crass, even though it can push to that line very closely at times. You just have so many laugh out moments, whether it's Marcus squirming uneasily as Lady Eloise makes her advances. We see her being played by Eartha Kitt here. We have this scene at the dinner table, which is even more funny, where we see Lady Eloise's butler constantly hiding his laughter as he sees Marcus going through his experience. We have Tisha Campbell's Yvonne as Marcus's neighbour and one of his previous one-night stands, telling every single one of his women how much of a dog he is. We have Jeffrey Holder's Nelson, the creative force behind the extravagant Strangé commercials, and speaking of Lady Strangé, we also have to talk about Grace Jones in an outrageous dinner scene between her and Marcus, very funny and extremely rude as well. We then have some hilarious moments when Gerard's parents come to Thanksgiving dinner, very brazen and reckless but extremely funny, very crass moments at times perhaps, but also very laugh out loud all the same. Gerard's father in particular talking about how Marcus has been whipped and the constant bang, 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 very funny when you watch it so many times. But for all of the comedic moments here, the film is a bit more insightful, even more so than what we see in a typical romantic comedy, and this is where we focus on the three primary characters, Marcus, Jacqueline and Angela, and this is when we really ask the question, who is the real player? Now most would say the answer is Marcus, and whilst he's not an unlikable character, there is a certain satisfaction in seeing him meet his match and get his overall comeuppance, and yes, for the most part he absolutely deserves it. The more interesting debate is around Jacqueline, very much painted here as the villain of sorts of the piece, due to her casual indifference and her overall treatment of Marcus, but if we really think about it, Jacqueline just might be the character with the most integrity in the entire movie, perhaps outside of Gerard. Look at how she's completely straight with Marcus from the start, telling him that she's not in for any long-term commitment. For all we know, she's come across Marcus's type so many times and she just knows how to deal with him. Who knows? Maybe she's been mistreated herself by other men in the past and this is what has made her so much more a stronger individual. Of course, she's confident and perhaps a bit more self-consumed, but she doesn't treat anybody else within the movie with the same contempt that she does with Marcus. And at least with Jacqueline, you know exactly where you stand. And if you're somebody who foolishly falls in love with her, expecting more and not getting it, then it's really down more to you rather than it is to her. Now, we could play devil's advocate here and say that whilst many men should be very wary of women like Jacqueline, we could also argue that many women should also be wary of men like Marcus. Which then leads us to the most contentious character of the entire movie, and that is Angela. In the movie, we see that she's the work colleague of Marcus, and on the surface, we'd see her as very much the hero or the heroine of the piece. She's very sweet-natured, considerable, smart, much more understated than Jacqueline, but she still has that hardened resolve. We also endear to her where we see her, of course, teaching the kids in the class. And you'd look at a girl like Angela as the perfect girlfriend, who's very sensible, she knows what she's doing, and she'll be smart enough to avoid the players that come towards her. Yet we see her falling for Marcus, despite knowing his reputation, knowing his involvement with Jacqueline, yet Angela still goes after him. She could have ended up with Gerard, who would have treated her right with respect, but because he's too much of a nice guy, that's not really satisfactory for her. She wants the bad boy, she wants the player, and as soon as Jacqueline was out of the picture, and we see Marcus broken from their breakup, as he has to take a week off work, this is when Angela swoops in to take her opportunity. So is Angela every bit as opportunistic as Jacqueline, but just far less forward about it? She's obviously attracted to Marcus, but she waited until he was at a much more vulnerable point before pursuing him. Would she have gone after him if Marcus was much more in his confident phase? I'm not sure she would have. Now, Angela's character comes into even further question when at the end of the movie, after Marcus has essentially cheated on her by going to sleep with Jacqueline, after realising that he's in love with Angela, he comes crawling back, and after a few moments, Angela just accepts him. And in this moment, your respect for Angela drops fast. After seeing her get promoted and how well she's dressed, looking even hotter than what Jacqueline does, and seeing her recover a lot of her self-assurance, she actually loses a lot of her integrity by just taking Marcus back. So is Angela the epitome of that sweetheart who's too easily swayed by the player? Do we lose respect for her in this particular moment? And overall, in the film's climax, it's a far less euphoric moment seeing Marcus and Angela end up together, as Marcus isn't really a sympathetic character, so it's not really that rewarding or satisfying to see him get the girl in the end. And that's something you should always feel at the end of any romantic comedy. The whole concept is whether we will see the couple end up happily together. But are Marcus and Angela really a genuine couple, or is it much more a relationship of rebounds and conveniences? I'd have to say overall I think it's the latter. So after all that discussion, we then go on to the movie's overall release, and the film did enjoy some success, grossing over $131 million from a $42 million budget. The film itself had a mixed reception in terms of critics and audiences. I think one of the biggest reasons here is because of the deliberate shift in Eddie Murphy's persona. He had propelled himself to become one of the biggest superstars of the 1980s with the likes of 48 Hours, Trading Places and Beverly Hills Cop. And all of these movies involved him playing much more risk, foul-mouthed, fast-talking, abrasive characters. Now in Boomerang, this was an attempt for a much more smoother, sophisticated characterization, and many of fans found that direction at odds with what Eddie Murphy had played before. This was a direction very much against the iconic image that he'd built up throughout his great run of success. And this change in his personality unfortunately resulted in a downturn in the box office success of his movies following its release. But I do feel that the movie has gained a lot of appreciation from black audiences, especially for portraying black characters and personalities as successful, affluent career professionals, playing against the more typical stereotypes that we had seen black characters being portrayed as during the early to mid-90s, when we had that New Jack swing of powerful crime dramas and thrillers concerning the likes of New Jack City, Boys in the Hood, Jungle Fever and Menace to Society. This is where we saw a lot of black characters being portrayed as gangsters, drug addicts, adulterers or disillusioned teenagers. Now the other legacy of the movie, of course, was the main soundtrack theme song, End of the Road by Boys to Men, which was an absolutely massive song at the time, holding the #1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100 charts for a 13-week run. And I can vividly remember at the time when the song was released, being played endlessly everywhere, and Boys to Men would go on to become one of the most successful R&B groups within the early to mid 1990s. But when looking back at Boomerang, it's still a film that I love, and I can watch it endlessly and be entertained through some hilarious comedic moments, but also now with further insight into the characterisation, appreciating it very much so for how it portrayed black characters. And overall, I think it's a very smart addition to the romantic comedy genre, offering something different and therefore something far more thoughtful and overall more rewarding. So that's my overall thoughts and feelings when looking back at Boomerang. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you'd like to see me review more movies like this, or cover any other topics or subject matter within the pop entertainment and culture scene, let me know in the comments and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please consider hitting like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.